Hey guys, Lyda Garcia here from The Ohio State University, Associate Professor and Extension Meat Specialist. As you know, we're coming around tailgating season. So today's topic is about beef fajitas, for beef tacos. What beef cuts can we use for beef fajitas? Well, the original beef cut actually is what we refer to as the skirt steak. Now, what I have in front of me today is an outside skirt. It naturally comes with a thick connective tissue on both sides. Now, but usually when you receive it or you buy it from the meat market, that's already going to be removed. And so what you have left are going to be just a little bit of chunks of fat that actually it's up to your preference and whether you want to leave it on or not. And as you can see here, this one's already been trimmed straight from the meat market, making my life a little bit easier. And if I flip this over, you'll notice that it's a little bit different. There's a little bit more cover on this other side. Again, it's up to you. It's your preference on how much you want to leave there. But my recommendation is that if you do want to remove more of that fat than what the meat market has already done, be sure to stick your knife right underneath the fat, keeping that blade closer to the fat than to the meat itself, and then just start shaving away. Now, I personally don't want to remove too much because through trial and error, I figured out that if you remove everything, then that product ends up really dry, and then there's so many complaints about your cooking. So, and don't forget, fat does add flavor, and it will add juiciness too to that product. Now, what happens if the beef fajita can't be found in your area? Well, here's an alternative. Here we have what we call a beef flank. A beef flank, as most of us have known, are used for stir fry, but that doesn't mean we can't use it for a beef fajita taco. You'll notice that the muscle fibers on this particular cut does differ. It does from our beef skirt. Now, there are pros and cons, there are benefits and so forth to each one, but let me tell you, both of them will still result in a very tender, flavorful, and juicy product. You can't go wrong. It's just a matter of what you can find in your area, and of course it's going to be cost. So one of the main things that we need to keep in mind when we're going to tailgate is cleanliness and food safety. What you see here are just a few items that I brought to the table just to share on what we could use to help reduce any potential problems. Like, for example, we talk about PPEs, we should consider gloves. Here we have some gloves that you can just buy over the counter that actually protects the meat from you, but also you from the meat at the same time. Wearing an apron, such as what I have on today, will be very helpful in keeping that meat product safe from you and vice versa. And again, don't forget your thermometer. So what I have here is the marinade. It's been marinated for 4 hours. I then have my own South Texas rub that I'll add there towards the end of the cook time. But then on this side, I have a typical fajita seasoning that I use. Now, this one in particular has a tenderizer included. What does that mean? That means that tenderizer is going to help make this product a bit more tender. The one thing I don't recommend is that if your fajita seasoning comes with a tenderizer, we don't want to leave it on too long. And what's determined too long? Well, I would say nothing more than 45 minutes because it has been from my personal experience that if we leave this on too long, that product's going to turn into mush. It's going to have a mushy texture. So this particular one, this beef flank, again, I've chosen to do a dry rub, and with our skirt steak, I've chosen to do a marinade. All right, so let's get to cooking. Now, because these two products are still fairly thin enough, we can actually just leave that lid open and just monitor. Now, usually about 2-3 minutes would be just enough, but what I try to do is reduce the amount of water that surfaces on that meat product, because the way I see it is if we can retain more of that water, the juicier that product is going to be. And today I'm going to aim for about 145 degree Fahrenheit temperature because I have to count on that temperature continuing to rise once we remove it from the heat. I estimate about 4 to 7 degrees higher, and 145, I have figured out that most of my guests really enjoy that temperature. And one added bonus to this for your tailgate is actually heating up your tortillas, whether you prefer corn or flour. Give these just a few seconds on the grill, and that'll really add a nice flavor to your fajita tacos. And so we're just about ready to start plating and fixing that taco. Now, the next step to what we're going to do is now to slice them. And so what I usually aim for is for my strip slices to range between 3.5, even in some cases 4 inches long. Now, since I actually, just for the sake of the cutting board, I actually just cut this in half just to make it easier to work with. But in just looking at this strip from the beef skirt, I'm just going to cut this in half. Now, remember when I talked about the muscle fibers? Now, a good rule of thumb, and I highly recommend this step, is that you cut against the grain. And here, as you can see, our muscle fibers run left to right, right to left, and this is roughly about a good 3.5 inches. I'm going to come over to my other strip, and I'm just going to cut this one into thirds, more or less, so that I can now start cutting my strips. If you sense that the firmness of that product is kind of soft, then I would say cut about 1/4 inch. But usually what I have found is when the texture appears to be a little bit more firmer, one way to combat that potential toughness, or maybe just not as tough as we'd like it, then cut it a little bit thinner will help with that tenderness. And as you can see on this end, these particular strips weren't as red, only because the thickness of the skirt steak of that diaphragm is not consistent throughout that whole area. So you are going to have differentiations in thickness. And so, but I guarantee you, even though that this guy right here is a little bit thinner, still going to be a delicious product. So here we have just our fajita strips from our skirt steak, and now we have our flank. Now, because it's a whole muscle, and again, still keeping that 3.5 inch, maybe even 4 inch length for strips, I'm just going to come straight down and run with the muscle fibers. Now, don't worry, I'm actually going to cut against the grain. And because I can feel that the flank steak is a bit firmer, I'm going to cut these strips a little bit thinner. And that just helps break down the muscle fibers a little more and less connective tissue if there's really a lot present. Now, you will notice on how the beef flank doesn't appear as juicy as the skirt steak. Now, don't forget, there are some benefits to marinating these products to help assure that juiciness. But I guarantee you this one is going to be just as good. So fire up the grill and earn that MVP award at the next tailgate with our go-to game day recipes.